This exercise is designed to target what are called the deep six hip muscles. We're thinking the gemelli, the superior and inferior gemelli. We've got the obturator internus externus, we've got the quadratus femoris and the piriformis. These are really important stabilising muscles in the deep hip socket, and they're quite difficult to tap into. Now, in order to get to them, you need to try and remove the big, powerful superior glute muscles from the equation a little bit. And the way you can do that is by bringing your hip into flexion. So that's worth just pointing out before we get down into this variation, which is essentially based on the bear pose or the modified swimming level 4. You're on hands and knees for this one. When we get down, we're going to have to think about how we can access these, and it's worth just kind of mimicking that. If I'm in sitting and I'm kind of mimicking being on all fours, the axis of rotation runs from my hip through to my knee. And if my foot comes inwards and swings inwards, my hip joint externally rotates in this position. If I swing my foot outwards, then it internally rotates. So we're going to translate that down onto the mat now. And for this exercise, you're going to need a resistance band or loop anchored to something solid outside your line of 4-point kneeling. So if you come down onto all fours, you're going to need to have the band tied outside you so that you can put your foot through what you've got in terms of your resistance band or loop. Excuse me. Now the point being here is that once you've got a little bit of tension on the band, and you just do that by shuffling sideways away from the point of anchor, is if I completely relax my foot, the band is going to pull my foot back towards it. Now that has internally rotated my hip joint, which means that in order to resist that force, I have to use the deep external rotators, and that wakes up that deep six. So for this one, you come to a point where your feet and knees are hip width apart, where you're in a nice all fours position like a bear pose or the swimming level 4, the modified mat work Pilates exercise, and you should be able to feel that there's pretty good pull on the band. All that's needed to do at this point is I bend my knee to bring my foot up off the floor, and when I return that so it's plumb in line with my knee, my foot's off the deck, and I'm now using that deep six to resist the pull of the band. If they're not working, it gets pulled across, hip goes into inward rotation, but with them working and just holding isometrically, statically in that position, I know that I'm accessing those deep hip stabilizing muscles. So there's the basic premise of this exercise, and there's lots of schools of thought here. Typically I would suggest people start working up holding this isometric contraction. If I just spin sideways to get a slightly better view of that, lifting up the foot, holding the force from the band, and just getting used to holding that for 15 or 20 seconds. Now, if you're doing this for the first time, you don't want any bouncing in that band, which would typically characterize dysfunction or weakness or lack of control in the muscles which you're targeting. So if you're getting that, reduce the resistance. Either shuffle closer towards it or use a lighter band. Now, once you get to a point where you can hold that tension pretty comfortably and there's reasonable resistance on the band, we can challenge the core to work in association with those hip stabilizing muscles. And this is similar to the modifications of the swimming exercise from the mat work program. Foot's off the floor, isometric hold engaged, core muscles, neutral spine, all those standard Pilates principles. And then from here, we can remove a base of support. We can try performing that modified swimming arm reach. And I can feel how when I'm doing that I'm just needing a little bit more concentration to stop that band bouncing my foot around. The other thing that can be done as a modification is to make this an isotonic movement, so generating internal-external rotation in the hip joint itself. So you could allow that foot to be pulled out to the side, foot's off the floor, and then you can swing the foot in, and you can work those deep hip muscles through range of movement. Now, the more hip flexion you have as a baseline, the less the gluteal muscles can do. So if you want to make this more challenging still, you can bend your knees a little bit, which simultaneously increases your hip flexion by bringing that thigh up towards your stomach, and you can try the same exercise again. Foot off the floor, even less that the glutes can do to help secure this position, and you might notice that's significantly harder with that increased hip flexion position. But as I said at the beginning, it's quite difficult to access these deep hip muscles. This is a really nice exercise that you can do. And if you want to make it more difficult still, you could kneel on a balance cushion and introduce instability and then really take it to the next level. But this modification of the bear pose or modification of the swimming level 4, great for accessing those deep 6 hip muscles.